Quiet Connection is proud to be affiliated with the Blue Dot Project through Postpartum Support International. As an ambassador, I am dedicated to promoting perinatal mental health awareness, spreading the blue dot as a symbol of support and solidarity, and ending the stigma and shame. The blue dot is a universal symbol for perinatal mental health and is owned by the community. That means you. Anyone can use it. You'll notice a blue dot on all of Quiet Connection's social media accounts. To learn more, visit thebluedotproject.org. Welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around postpartum mental health. I'm Chelsea. Today we're diving into the transformative power of doula support with Kristin from Gold Coast Doulas. From her own birth experiences to building a full spectrum support service for families, Kristin shares how doulas advocate, educate, and empower birthing individuals every step of the way. Whether you're new to the concept of doulas or already a believer, this conversation is here to inform, inspire, and remind you, you don't have to do this alone. Here's Kristin. Hello, today I'm here with Kristin. Kristin, how are you?
I am doing well, Chelsea. A little tired from a flight last night, but doing well.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that you're doing well. I'm sorry about your flight delays. You're certainly doing a lot better on a lot less sleep than I am, so I will give you that. I'm really excited to have you here, Kristin. I could go down the list of things that I admire about you, but I think my listeners would appreciate it more if you would sort of introduce yourself and also who you were before you became a parent.
Ooh, so where to begin, Chelsea? At the core, who I am is all about empowering women. From the start of time, I've been a girl's girl and, lifted up my friends, and I helped really, when I was in college, create events and connecting opportunities. I was in a sorority and, held breast cancer awareness events and fundraisers, and really fell in love with, just who we are as a core. I wasn't sure if I would be a parent. I wasn't, one who loved holding babies and imagining being a homemaker. I was very career focused. And I ended up having kids later in life. I did everything from advertising sales to political fundraising and political communications. And when I was pregnant with my daughter later in life, I was advanced maternal age. And I was working in the governor's race. Yeah, so I was high risk status and really had no idea how challenging it was to build a dream birth and baby team until I was in the thick of it myself. And being that I had kids later in life, many of my friends went through it much earlier than me. They had kids in elementary school, high school. And so their advice was outdated. So I started searching on some of the pregnancy sites like Baby Center and, really asked friends. But then I found that their OBs had retired or the childbirth class they took didn't exist. I didn't know about doulas with my first pregnancy, but ended up switching providers when I felt like I wasn't being fully heard, and found a nurse midwifery group. And there I learned more about my options with out-of-hospital classes, took Lamaze, and, my husband had some hesitation with some of my choices because he had been married before, and they ended up having some, trauma and emergency cesarean. And so for me to want an unmedicated birth was a bit outside of his comfort level. And so, yeah, it it really changed me. The whole process of becoming a mother, not just once, but twice. And I fell in love with advocating for women in that way. With all the choices we make, all the judgment we face about our decisions and how we birth, how we feed our babies, how we parent our babies. So after I was pregnant with my son, I had been doing some breastfeeding advocacy work, helped, create a rally in my community and brought in political leaders I knew. And I met doulas at that rally. So when I was pregnant, my first call was to the doulas that I met, and they gave me so many resources and options because I'd had preeclampsia with my daughter. She was in the NICU for multiple days due to glucose issues. So I struggled with feeding. And I didn't want the same thing to happen with my second pregnancy. So my doulas gave me so many resources. I saw a functional medicine doctor, making sure that my health was where it needed to be, and swam almost daily and did what I could to keep my blood pressure down. So I had my dream birth with a few minor complications and decided to get into childbirth education as more of a hobby, just to give families options. So I went to a training in Virginia with my family when my son was 4 months old.
Oh, wow.
And and then had been promoting the classes before the training and started teaching right after that. And it's very common with childbirth educators. My students wanted me to be their doula. And again, I knew politics, I knew ad sales. That wasn't something that I was comfortable with. And I decided that I might just get trained because I'm one of those people that likes all of the education and training. So I figured it wouldn't hurt. Went to a training in Florida because back at that time, I've been a doula over 12 years. There weren't a lot of training options in Michigan. You often had to travel unless you went through one particular organization. And I really got immersed in supporting women without judgment and being that non-medical guide and supporting the partner equally. And so I took a couple of my students on as clients, joined a collective, and with the first birth, all of my fears that happened sort of, I was faced with some of those, and I loved it. And it isn't an easy job being on call and all of the uncertain unknowns in the birth doula role. But it has been so fulfilling and supporting families. I feel like, especially the after birth care that we do as postpartum doulas and newborn care specialists, changes lives and makes families feel like they aren't alone. And in this country, it's like you have your baby and just go for it and don't ask for help because you're weak if you do. But I feel like, even though I love being a birth doula, and feel that role, I have so much reverence for it, but that postnatal time is crucial in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was so much. But so listeners, as you can tell, this is a doula episode. And we love a doula. We love a doula. You, not only did you go through your own like birthing experiences that had their own kind of trauma tied to them, like you said, you kind of like faced your fears, saw an interest, felt a pull, and followed that. And now you are the owner and founder of Gold Coast Doulas. You're doing the thing, which is amazing. You made some pretty big career shifts and changes to going from sales and politics into the whole birth realm. Like, it's I want to say like that's a huge short. Ugh. a huge difference, but birth can be political, and
Yes.
especially right now. So some of the things that I loved that you highlighted, as you so beautifully told us about the story to where you are, the journey to where you are now, is doulas do so much more than just attend a birth. They're there for the birthing person. They are there for the partner and the postpartum care. The postpartum doulas are so crucial. And so many people don't know what a doula is, how to find a doula, what do are doulas covered under my insurance? Like there's so many questions, and the answers vary depending on where you are. So could you sort of talk to us a little bit about Gold Coast Doulas and what you are able to provide in your home state in Michigan?
Yes. So I created the business that I wish existed for me in my own pregnancies. So we are full service, non medical support from conception through with sleep consulting up to age 5. But really, we focus on the first critical year and have everything from classes, both virtual and in person, to lactation consultants, birth doulas, postpartum doulas, overnight doulas, as well as newborn care specialists, sleep consultants, baby registry consultants, the whole, pretty much everything but placenta encapsulation. We don't offer that.
Yes. Yeah, that's still one thing. I don't think we've covered that on the podcast. Um, but yeah, so you really do cover from I won't say from start to finish, because I don't think we're ever really finished once we're parents. But
No.
you're really there for the critical times, advocating for families.
Absolutely. And working together with their care team of choice. Now, many doulas have a niche and they may specialize in home births or a VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean, or really focus on unmedicated hospital births. But we support our families where they're at. So no matter where they birth, but they have to have a provider. We don't attend unassisted birth. Some doulas do.
Mhm.
And how they choose. So if they want an epidural right away, you can still have a doula. You have to find the right doula. And we also support planned surgical births. So we are there to guide them through pregnancy, through labor and delivery, immediately after the birth. And then we also provide a follow up visit within 2 weeks of when they deliver, because that 6-week visit is too long
Uh-huh.
to get help. So we are there to give resources to process the birth, to help with feeding if there are questions, and answer some newborn questions. And then again, give those appropriate referrals, because I want to stress many times that we are non-medical.
Yeah, I think so. We've talked about this on the podcast before. We've talked to a couple of doulas, and what I love too in speaking with doulas from all over the country is that, like you said, everyone sort of has their little like niche. Like everyone has what they feel like pulled to and drawn to, and I love that you are offering such a diverse range of doula care. But yes, a lot of people get confused between doulas and midwives, and they are not the same thing.
Not at all.
Nope, no. But both are so crucial, I feel like. I typically don't like put my own opinions into things, but if I have one opinion that I'm gonna stress on Quiet Connection, is I really strongly feel that every birthing person should have access to doula care and the option of midwifery care as well. um Both can be game changing. So again, referencing back to your birth story, your initial birth story with your first, it didn't quite go according to plan. When you stepped into the birth education and doula realm, What do you think were some things that were important to you that you provided that was not provided to you in that experience?
I felt like with my first birth, I was induced for preeclampsia. I was on bed rest for multiple weeks, that the hospital was so busy and a lot of decisions needed to be made that I felt alone, even with a nurse midwife. She had other patients. She was barely in my room for the induction.
Mm.
No fault of her own, but when people deliver, you need to be with the delivering patient. And the nurse was in and out. And so I felt like it wasn't what I expected in my Lamaze class, in how my labor would go. I never expected an induction. I kept, hearing that I had the perfect pregnancy up
Mm.
until, it got closer to my due date around that 36, 37 week mark. I kept getting more and more signs. And so being a planner, I thought I could read all the books, watch all the documentaries like The Business of Being Born, take a breastfeeding
Yes.
class, Lamaze class, and that my birth would go exactly the way I planned it. And I would have this glorious skin to skin time and room in with my baby. But that's not what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's kind of why we're here, right? Like we do all picture and envision this beautiful birth experience because that's what we're told about. That's what we hear about. But these other experiences are happening and they're happening and they're common. Um and it's okay. It's okay to talk about it. So when you think about your doula work now and when you started like birth education, um, what were the things that are most important to you or were most important to you that you felt like you needed during that time?
Yes. So parents not feeling like they're alone, like they have options, that if things are not an emergency, we can slow it down and talk through the risks and benefits and alternatives. So you feel like birth isn't happening to you, like you are making informed decisions, even if your birth doesn't go according to plan. I've always been very intuitive. So, as a birth doula specifically, I'm also a postpartum doula. I go into the birth without any judgment. I don't keep a scorecard anymore like I did as a new doula. I don't feel like I've failed if my client gets an epidural when they said they wanted to avoid any pain medication. I'm there to as like a vessel of support, and I will go along with whatever their plan is. But my goal is to support them, to hear them. I'm great with physical support. Doulas also provide position changes, information if labor stalls, give some tips if baby needs to turn, if they're posterior or transverse, and hip squeezes, counter pressure, and whether a client has an unmedicated birth or an epidural. I do as much physical work with an epidural client as I do with an unmedicated. And then I love working as a team with nurses, midwives, OBs. And if a friend or mother is in the room, and the partner, certainly, and to find what everyone wants their ideal role to be. So some partners are more of the hand holder, and I will encourage them, give them tips. So the connection and memory that a couple has is not of the doula did everything, it's what the partner did and their role, because partners often are hesitant not only by the financial investment of a doula, but also that a doula might replace them. My husband
Mm.
felt the same thing when I hired doulas. He's like, I didn't do a good enough job with the first. I felt like, but I
Oh.
wanted, like, women have always been supporting women, you know, around the world, across time. It has been our role. Like, doulas were a profession much more recently, but we've always supported women in our communities through labor and early parenting. And so I wanted that type of non medical support. at my birth. And so regardless of choices, I feel it's important to be there, that consistent presence in the birthing space that a doula provides, and that calmness that we can bring to any scenario is so needed.
Yeah. Yeah. The overarching word, like umbrella word that I often use for doulas is just advocate and advocacy. And I truly do wish that I had known about doulas at all when I had my two children. And my youngest is only 2. So even 2 years ago, I had never heard of I joke actually. The only thing I'd known about doulas was from the TV show Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
Yes. And they named their baby Doula because they had a doula.
Yes,
And
I love that.
yeah, that's all I knew. That's all I knew about. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's just like, so it's for people who are, like you said, like people who are having unassisted births. And like, I had no idea. I had no scope of knowledge in that area at all. So, but now I wish I would have known, because what birth doulas and postpartum doulas do is really advocate. You are the advocate when in some of the most vulnerable and life-changing moments in a person's life. You're there to make sure that their needs and their wants are being respected and heard. And that's so powerful. That's so
Absolutely.
powerful.
And it's the work we do prenatally. So our clients are asking questions during pregnancy to their provider. We can give them information and resources. So the doula isn't the one necessarily advocating, but the client is learning how to advocate for themselves, ask the right question. The partner is feeling like they are informed, whether they took a childbirth class or not, even from the prenatal visits with the doula. And again, like I love the word advocate, but sometimes doulas can get into the activist space, or
Mm.
they have their idea of how birth or parenting should be. And so I sometimes step back a little bit with the advocate term, because some doulas take it to a different level, and it's like against authority or the hospital system. And I find that I've made more progress working within the system and being collaborative than fighting the system. And
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like there's a place for everything, but in someone's birth space, I am going to be collaborative and help them make informed decisions, but I don't have an agenda going into a birth.
I love that. I love that distinction. Um, and I think you're right. I think it's so important, collaboration with the team, while also ensuring that your birthing person is feeling heard and feeling right. Like you said before, like it's not that the act of birth is happening to them. They are an active participant in their birthing experience.
Yes. And some people don't want to be, and that's their
Yeah.
choice. They want to be a patient and follow along, and whatever happens. They usually don't hire a doula,
Right.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I also, one of the things that I really, really like about how you approach doula work and just the birth realm in general is the judgment-free support. And like you said, um, again, not all doulas are created equal, and it's about finding the right doula, but going in with without an agenda of your own and going in without judgment or a preconceived idea of how you think the birth should go um, is so validating and so important to the person who is giving birth, because we think of birth as such a clinical experience. Like you said, like some people really don't want to be, and they want to be the patient. They want to be told what to do and go in and have their baby, and that's the end. But I think a lot of us are really yearning for what you were yearning for that first time around, that skin to skin, that golden hour, that, okay, I'm going to be unmedicated and it's going to be beautiful. And it may not always be that way, but going in without judgment and without an agenda is probably one of the greatest gifts you can give to the people that you're working with. There wasn't really a question in there. That was just
No, I appreciate that. And it's so true. I mean, there is a lot of managed patient care. And so going in without a set, this has to happen at this time, and just being open. And even in the postnatal recovery time, every day with the same client can be different. Their needs might be different. And every client has different reasons for their choices. If they choose to exclusively pump, it's not my belief that breastfeeding is, say, a better way to connect and more efficient. And, if they want to pump or formula feed, that I'm going to give them resources and support and make sure that they are feeling empowered in their choices. And if they want information, I will give it. And so again, like, some doulas are focused on breast is best and at all costs, and they're going to be focused on that. But I believe in choices, and also giving, education on, supporting those choices, or maybe reconsidering some. And so if they want to talk about different feeding options, and if they're a formula feeding mom and feeling judged in those mom groups, getting them support with other formula feeding moms, for example.
Yeah, I love that. You're creating connections, which is it's what we're all about. So I love that so much. So we've talked a lot already in our short time together about how important it is to sort of find a doula that is in alignment with your needs and beliefs, and how they can support you best. What do you think is most misunderstood about what a doula does, or how a doula can serve a new family?
Yes. So, Chelsea, as you mentioned earlier, that confusion of the role of a doula and a midwife, and that doulas are only for home births or unmedicated births, would be a misconception. When doulas are depicted in the media, in a movie or TV show, they're often the crunchy, flowy, like long skirt Birkenstock. I mean, I'm a suit wearing and very mainstream. And there are doulas who use crystals and are very earthy, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not all of us. The profession has changed, and there is a doula for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. Right, because that's exactly the doula that I was picturing when I was, right, like when I was younger. I was like, oh yeah, it's just the like flowy, and we're gonna have incense burning, and I have incense burning right now, but that doesn't mean necessarily that every doula is going to look or practice that way. And there is a doula for everyone. On that sort of in that same vein, what do you think are the barriers to people accessing doulas or finding doulas?
So obviously, some communities don't have many doula options. If they are in a rural area, there may only be a couple, and they could be booked.
Mm-hmm.
So the support, there are virtual doulas. It's something I offer. I'm also a certified birth coach, so I can help people in communities that don't have access to a doula. So I would certainly recommend to your listeners who are either early in pregnancy or, planning their first or next pregnancy, to hire early
Mm-hmm.
and get that connection going, similar to what I did with my second pregnancy, of having doulas as a resource when I needed to find a prenatal yoga class, or I was looking at making sure that I wasn't depleted from breastfeeding my daughter. with my second pregnancy. And so going to a functional medicine or dietitian and knowing all of those options. And yeah, so it just hiring early and knowing how to search for a doula. Obviously, you can type in doula near me on Google. That's one way
Right.
to do it. And find someone with a website or who is on a site like Doula Match. Would be
I'd
one
never
way
even
to
heard of
type in a
that.
zip code, and you can find birth and postpartum doulas through Doula Match. There's Bombear. There are a few other online apps or sources to find doulas. And then if you have a friend who's worked with a doula, getting that recommendation, we often get referrals from past clients or friends. And then physicians or midwives especially know doulas in the community. So you can ask around. Every personality is different. Some people do the research online and others trust a personal recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to note that like every state is different as well too. So and I like we won't get into it because it could be a whole other podcast, but like some insurances will cover doula care, some insurances will not, some states will, some it's so access to doula care is challenging and complicated, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't look into it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But like you said, there are resources and there are ways to find doulas around you or near you.
If you have a minute, I'd love to touch on that, Chelsea.
Oh, yes, let's touch on it then. Yeah, I was going to take it in a different direction, but yes, I love it. Let's talk about it, please.
So, talking about resources for both birth and postpartum doulas, you mentioned insurance. At this time, general insurance doesn't cover birth or postpartum, but there are a lot of self-funded employer benefits that cover both types of doulas or one type. And some of the bigger options would be Carrot Fertility.
Yes.
So they cover up to 6 weeks from birth with day and overnight postpartum support and birth doula support. It's an excellent benefit. I'm a big fan of Progeny and their birth and postpartum doula benefit plan. There is Maven as an option. There are military benefits for birth doulas, TRICARE, for example, and then some Christian healthcare sharing programs cover part of the cost of a birth doula, or if the doula is newer, it may be the full fee. And then health savings and flex spending have covered birth and postpartum doulas with most plans for the last several years. And you mentioned Medicaid for birth doulas and postpartum visits, not the actual act of caring for baby, but the visits and giving support and options. In many states, Michigan being one of them. And so finding a doula who is Medicaid covered for your particular insurance. My agency does not accept Medicaid for birth doulas. It's just our core focus is that overnight newborn care. And for me to focus on billing and pivot, I'm not making the impact that I want to. And I am so thankful for all of the doulas in Michigan that are providing that much needed support because women are still dying in childbirth. And doulas can impact that prenatal health and the support they get during labor. So I'm a big fan of Medicaid coverage. And I do feel like as it expands around the US, that the next step would certainly be general insurance covering at least the birth doula role.
Yeah. I am actually very glad that you wanted to talk about it. Because again, like I had mentioned earlier, like birth is political and insurance unfortunately is political, and let's hope that Medicaid remains, and that we can expand our access to doula care, because like you said, it does make a huge difference on birth outcomes for the birthing person and for baby. I don't have the statistic right off the top of my head, but I do know that support from, it doesn't matter who the support is from, support from a doula or support from family or support from friends in the perinatal and postpartum period significantly reduces the risk of birth trauma or PMADs or all of these things. And like we've been talking about, doulas are there for support. So the work that you're doing does save lives. So I am glad that you wanted to talk about it, because now listeners can, they know, like we've talked about carrot, but there are others that you mentioned that I hadn't heard of. So I appreciate that. I really, really do.
And hopefully, in a year from now, when listeners find this episode, there are many more options beyond that. But
Yeah.
one thing that I am a big fan of as a baby registry consultant is people registering for services like a
Yes.
postpartum doula, a breastfeeding class, a sleep consultant, even other services like a housekeeping service. If you're
Yes.
stressed by your house not being, ready for visitors, and a lot of family and friends are coming by, then maybe that's the best thing. Or meal delivery service. You don't need all the onesies, all the things gathering dust that your baby's not going to need until they're crawling,
Yes.
or walking. And so thinking about being very intentional with your registry, with your baby shower, and even I've had companies gift doula support as the big shower gift.
Wow.
And so knowing that the more support they have, the more rest an employee has, the more likely they're going to get back to work and be productive and stay in that job. So whether the employer is offering doula benefits or they're throwing a shower and gifting postpartum doula support, they are impacting, you know, the their company as a whole by having a well-rested, well-supported employee returning to work.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. I mean, in an ideal world, this would just be what we do, right? Like we would just be caring for our moms and our birthing people, and but I love that you're being real about it, and you're giving real resources and real tips, because this is where we're at. And yeah, like there was absolutely nothing on my registry about, like, I would have loved to have had a meal train sort of thing, or a house cleaner, or I'd still love to have a house cleaner, but
Same.
that's,
I would love
yeah.
it.
um it's just a constant cycle, but these are real tips that expecting parents can use, and I so appreciate that. Bringing it back a little bit and sort of talking about your experiences, um in your first birth experience and then your second birth experience with a doula. After you had your first, you said like it was really, really challenging, obviously, because you didn't get that time, you didn't get that skin to skin, you didn't get that rooming in. um how did that sort of affect your vision of motherhood, as because your first time entering it?
It was different than what my friends had experienced, what I learned in class, the childbirth videos I saw. And I have to say, I'm very fortunate. I had as close to my birth plan with an induction as you could. So
Mm-hmm.
I did not have any pain management. I basically had a cervical ripener and a membrane sweep. And I was fortunate that once I got my daughter to term, that she was able to, get born without any intervention. There was constant concern about the D cells during my labor. And she ended up having the cord wrapped around her arm after delivery. But when I was pushing, my midwife had mentioned that she had called for a cesarean and that it was, a very close situation. And
Mm-hmm.
then we found out that the cord was wrapped around her arm, which was causing some of the issues. So I avoided that recovery from a surgical birth that I would have had. And, it was difficult enough going back and forth from the NICU, but I didn't have the healing on top of it that many moms, especially with preeclampsia, do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but still, I felt like I wanted a different experience and knew that we wanted to have another child. And my midwife had suggested I wait a year and then try. And even with breastfeeding my daughter, I was able to get pregnant very easily. So I'm thankful for that. And that time around was different because I planned even more and
Yeah.
took Lamaze class all over again and hired all of the experts in my dream team. But still, with a fully unmedicated, laboring on my own at 40 plus 2 days, so over my
Mm.
due date, everything I wanted to experience, I hemorrhaged after, delivery, and my son had a tongue tie, so feeding was painful, but I didn't have a NICU stay. He was very healthy, and I experienced a truly intervention-free labor, other than obviously when I hemorrhaged and needing support
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah. And you said the second time around you did have a doula.
Yes, I had two
Yeah.
doulas, a team.
Yeah. And in what ways were you noticing that impacting your experience?
They were like best friends throughout my pregnancy. I could text them, and we had prenatal visits. I felt like I was truly supported. And even with my midwife group, I had longer prenatal visits. I felt connected to all of the midwives in the practice. And being that I had preeclampsia before, the OBs were closely monitoring my situation. But yeah, it was a unique experience to have them guide in a way with not only resources, but I would say friendship. And I am there as that cheerleader and support in however my client wants me to be there for them. And for my doulas, I wanted them to cheer me on, and I wanted my husband to be a very integral part in the labor process and that support. But my birth was so quick. Like my doulas barely got to my house and they're like, you need to go to the hospital. And I was in triage longer than my room. My water broke when I got to the room. And the midwives had left the practice. So I had OBs with me actually the last month of my pregnancy. And so it was middle of the day on Halloween, and
Oh my
my
gosh.
OB ran in, but the resident was going to catch my son because it was so quick. Like no one expected it to be that quick. I was a 7 in triage and like had my baby in a matter of minutes.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
and I think that's part of, like, again, I hemorrhaged after delivery, but yeah, it was to have them there for that skin to skin time and help with breastfeeding, and to have their support even though they weren't with me. Like I can sometimes be with a client, especially with an induction, for days. It
Mm-hmm.
was a quick birth. They barely did hip squeezes on me, but I still, especially in pregnancy, valued that support. And if I had another child, I would never, even if I never became a doula, I would never do it without a doula.
Yeah. That is a common sentiment. Which is, again, I truly, truly wish for every parent and new birthing person that they have doula support. I wish I had doula support. I honestly, truly believe that doulas and midwives could change all of these awful, scary statistics that we see that are real. They're scary, but they're real
They are real.
about infant and maternal mortality in the US. And I'm not saying that that doulas and midwives can wave a magic wand and make it all go away. But I think that the work that you are doing and that midwifery care does is so much more focused on whole wellness, mental and physical wellness for mom and baby.
Right.
And I just think that it can make all the difference in the world if we had more access. This is an interesting question that just kind of popped into my head, but what do you see any similarities in the work that you were doing, like you said, in politics and with politicians, and the work that you're doing as a doula? Any like overlapping skill areas?
Yes. So I was very passionate about getting women to feel confident to run for office without being asked and to raise the money that they need to win. And
Mm-hmm.
so, again, that I woke up every morning with that drive of women need to be in places of power, and women have unique experiences. And now, as a mother, I believe that moms get things done. We see
Yes.
a problem and we solve it, and we need more moms in office, not just
Yes.
women.
I 100% agree with you. Moms get things done. I think becoming a mother wakes something up in you, and it's like you're seeing through different lenses. So yeah, moms get things
Absolutely.
done.
And now I'm in that perimenopause state. And so I feel like a different kind of fire in
Yeah.
my belly. It's crazy. But like the motherhood combined with aging fiercely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I love
I
it.
love it. Well, it sounds like you've always been about empowerment for women, like from the get-go. You, not only for yourself, but you want to see other women succeed. You want to see other women feel their power. And that's amazing. That's your superpower. You are helping women see their superpowers. So yeah, I think that that's such a beautiful thing, and I love that you're doing that in the birth realm and the postpartum realm and just life in general. We need people like that.
Thanks. I feel like in retirement, it's a long way away. But my plan is to get into more policy advocacy, and I'm involved in multiple groups, including March of Dimes, and
Hmm.
very involved in statewide coalitions for infant and maternal health. But I would like to be able to do some advocacy when I'm in my retirement phase because I'm a workaholic. I don't think I'll ever retire.
I feel that I always feel like I need to be I feel like I mean, activism, I guess, is the word that comes to mind, but like always needing to be advocating and being involved in some sort of activism for the things that we feel strongly about. And
Yes.
yeah, I think what you're doing is incredible. Um, to bring us sort of full circle, I think, so listeners, I always ask one of two questions, and it's getting to the point, it's getting harder and harder to pick the question. It used to be like, okay, I'll get, because I save it to the end so that I can get to know you. And it's getting harder and harder because I want to know all the things. But I think I think since you did such a beautiful job telling us what a doula is, what a doula does, what you can do to help yourself prepare, rather than asking my question of like, what message do you hope people take away? I think what I'll ask you is, if you could go back in time, it's that time machine question. You can't tell yourself anything about where you're going to be today or how you got here, but you can instill something within yourself to carry you through and to give you that power that you need. What do you think you would instill within yourself?
To trust that little nagging feeling or your gut. And I have found, again, as I age, that if I listen to my instinct or that little voice, I can't go wrong. And I tell my clients that no one knows their body or their baby the way they do. And we are set instinctually to be mothers, and it is up to us to advocate for ourselves. So in my life, even as a planner, am trusting my gut more, and things are going better than asking others for advice or researching. Is, again, trusting my instincts at an earlier age rather than going with the flow.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of answers both of my questions. That's kind of cool. You would instill that within yourself, and you want that for others. So I love that. That's awesome. Well, Kristin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsea.
I've loved chatting with you. I always love chatting about doula care, and it's the one thing we always say: we don't promote or endorse or anything like businesses or coaching or anything like that. But that is like my hill that I will stand on is doulas. Everybody should look into doulas, because even if it's not for you, just look into it, because it very well could be. So yeah, thank you for sharing some of your time with us, sharing your story with us, and for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. And I appreciate your podcast, all the advocacy and work you're doing. And again, to support women especially is so important in these times, and to know that we're not alone.
A huge thank you to Kristin for sharing her wisdom, her story, and the incredible work she's doing through Gold Coast Doulas. The resources, support, and advocacy she's providing are truly changing lives, and we're so grateful to have her voice in this space. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it, and be sure to check the show notes to learn more about all of Kristin's resources. You can keep up with us on Quiet Connection by following us on Facebook, Instagram, RedNote, YouTube, and Threads at Quiet Connection Podcast. You can also find us on Blue Sky at Quiet Connection Pod. You can help our community grow by leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and consider sharing our episodes on social media. Be sure to check out our Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee accounts to support our mission and get exclusive access to bonus episodes and other goodies. To share your personal journey, you can contact us through our website at quietconnectionpodcast.com or by email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you.